Greetings and salutations, folks. We're back with an episode of Unfinished Business Deep Dive. This week, we're going to take a look at a particular movie that I think a lot of you might remember from 1990. It is called Kindergarten Cop, which its title really pretty much explains the whole movie. We're only talking about Kindergarten Cop, none of its sequels, that went straight to DVD with Dolph Lundgren. But first of all, I am your host, Jeff Galashaw, and with me, as always, is co-host Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions.
Boys have penis, girls have vagina.
Yes, this movie is insanely quotable if you know this movie. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger starting to do comedy. He was inspired to do this movie after his first child was born. So this movie is about a detective who's taken down a drug dealer. And then, he finally gets the drug dealer and he's got a witness to go against her, but he has to find where the money went. And to find where the money went, he has to find his the drug dealer's wife who was run off with their child. And so he has to go with his new partner to go find this woman. And when she gets ill from eating bad gas station food, he has to take over and go undercover as the kindergarten teacher. And even though he's a tough as nails cop who's not afraid of anything, he's never faced a bunch of 4 and 5 year olds. And so Kindergarten Cop, it's studio formula filmmaking at its finest. Directed by Ivan Reitman, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Pamela Reed, Richard Tyson, and shockingly Penelope Ann Miller, who when I first saw it, I didn't recognize that it was her. And but this is also the movie that I guess introduced me to Kathy Moriarty as an actress too. Keep in mind, it was 1990. I was like 12. So it's not like, oh, Raging Bull Kathy Moriarty? I hadn't even heard of that movie. So I remember I saw this movie a lot in theaters, at least 3 times. I loved it and when I was 12. And I watched it each time that it was on Channel 11. I can still remember the score to it. That's how much I watched this movie. What I only recently, I guess, recognized about the film is how harsh the beginning is when we're in the city versus how mellow it gets soon as we go to the suburbs, One of the things I also notice is, now Arnold Schwarzenegger is supposed to be this tough as nails detective. What detective do you know who dresses like that? I'm used to seeing detectives wear suits, at least some, more updated casual wear. Unless he's working Vice or going undercover, why is he dressed like this?
He looked like a cross between if he had played Kyle Reese in The Terminator instead of The Terminator, and if he was making fun of Stallone with Cobra. Because the exact look with the glasses, the beard, and the jacket, he was doing Cobra at the beginning.
To me, he actually reminded me of, what was it, the party killer from The Hard Way.
Oh, yeah, the party crash.
The party crash.
Party pooper.
Exactly, because he's coming in and he's like, what was it? And the guy's asking him, is that my car? Is that your car, man? And then he's like, I love my car. And, it's just like, oh, come on. Now, of course, he goes, hilarity ensues with him dealing with the children. Oh, I forgot Linda Hunt is the principal. And, Arnold, I don't know why every time I mention his name, I have to do the accent.
Do it.
But Arnold and Ivan Reitman. Arnold and Ivan decided that there were certain subjects that had to be addressed in this movie, which was like child abuse, good physical fitness, because it's Arnold after all. And it's just like, and Arnold still says this is probably one of his favorite roles of all time. Though sometimes it feels like Arnold says that about every movie he makes when it's brought up, like, oh, one of my favorites, but I really, like I said, I hate to say it, it's smushy, it's mushy, but it still holds up, I'm shocked at how much I still enjoy it. Though, here's my major problem with this movie. Richard Tyson's character cannot be a drug dealer. If he is either a courier or an importer, because that dude is not doing street deals. Also, how did Penelope Ann Miller even fall for his character? He is so repressed and he's always around his mother. When would they have had enough time to have sex and have a child?
What kind of was she at before she became a teacher? That's what I'd like to know.
Apparently one in the Mama's Boys, because I'm like, Jesus. And also, you know who was first offered this role?
Who?
Christian Slater.
That would have been so weird. Like, Arnold would just snap him like a toothpick.
Well, first of all, I would have thought Christian Slater's way too young to play this role, even at that time. But he turned it down supposedly because he didn't want to get typecast after Heathers of playing, always the dark villain, with parental issues. I mean, let's face it, he more looks like a henchman throughout this movie, and really is because the real villain is his mother. And again, how does he get into drug dealing with a mother like that? You would figure she'd keep him away from the streets and trying to do that.
Something screwed up with her because, like, he had that story about the stuff that she was feeding him as a kid, and clearly was really screwing with his head till he got older and I guess got into the business.
Yeah, and she's okay with him drug dealing, and not to mention, if he's importing it, why can't he go get some child drugs for her to use on the kid that she wants to use anyway? I think that's the only reason she wants to see her grandchild is to start torturing the grandchild, and he just wants to play football with the kid. And so you kind of feel sorry for him by the end. Really.
Yeah, he's a tragic figure.
Exactly. There's no way he's winning in this movie. Plus, I know it's 1990. He's still rocking a ponytail. I'm getting Terry from Karate Kid 3 vibe, only more repressed, And that's really the only, it's not even a problem. It's kind of, it just feels very writerly. Like, whoever wrote this film wasn't thinking logistically. They were just like, hey, guess what? Not only is he a drug dealer, but he's got really weird mom issues. Like, this shit writes itself. Because it's just like, what the fuck? This makes no sense. But anyway, what is your history with Kindergarten Cop?
So I saw this on video, but I'm trying to remember if my parents rented it for me to watch or if I saw it in school, because I know there were a few times in lunch when this movie got rented and then everybody saw it. Yeah, I mean, like you, I enjoyed it as a kid because it was really Arnold at his peak at that time. He was doing all that health and fitness stuff with George Bush and, really promoting it with the kids. He was starting to become like a role model for children, even though he was still doing all these R-rated movies like Total Recall and, Predator. But, the thing about Arnold that is so appealing about him is you could just naturally put him at that time into any movie. He could do the action thing, but when he does comedy, it's not forced. It's just very natural. So like that idea where the first part of the movie feels like a typical Arnold Schwarzenegger film with him busting up drug dealers and so forth. And to see him then clean up and try to be a kindergarten teacher, the hilarity of him trying to be a kindergarten teacher to these kids, it's still funny to watch. And even his chemistry with Pamela Reed is also really good. Like, she bounces off him really well, which goes to show you, like, anybody that worked with him tended to look just as good as he did, if not better, because of his natural ability to just make you feel good. And I will say the plot is very cliched. I think you can almost point out who the kid was going to be, who he had to find, and just the little twists and turns with, oh, it might be the kid that's getting abused, it might be Kathy Moriarty's kid. It's like there's no surprise, and it's not because like I've seen it a million times, but just watching it and pretending like you have a fresh mind, you know right away with the other teacher he's going to have a relationship with, that she's going to have something to do with it. So that's maybe the one part of it that kind of drags it down. Otherwise, it still holds up. It's still very quotable. I mean, they do like the memes and the soundboards. Pretty much everything is from that film. You know, who's your daddy and what does he do? You know, like that stuff is always like giving me a laugh and a chuckle when I watch this film. And most of all, you know, it's just it's fun. It's mushy. It's cheesy when it needs to be, but it's fun because of Arnold, and you just gravitate to him because he is selling the shit out of it.
Well, I mean, even in the scene you're talking about, like, who's your daddy? What does he do? All that was improv from the kids, their answers, you know. So, you know, you have that cuteness factor that, yeah, again, you're like, this is so cheesy, but it wins you over, you know.
Our dad's a real sex machine.
Yes, from those those little twin girls who were also in Problem Child too. And I remember them from, I don't really remember them in anything. Though I still wonder sometimes if on The Simpsons they modeled those twin girls on The Simpsons after them. It's
crazy that a lot of those kids, well, not all, but some of them did end up breaking out in other things. So, you know, the one girl that was in Beethoven, Miko Hughes, who was in Mercury Rising, and I think he was in Pet Sematary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in there. Didn't they have the girl that was also in Problem Child 2, the one that played Trixie? Or am I thinking of another film?
I think you're thinking of another film.
Yeah, I mean, Parenthood was probably what I'm thinking of. But like, it was within that whole period of all these like little kids that went on to do some relatively big stuff. And Arnold actually last year, or no, the year before, did like one of these reunion things on Zoom with some of those kids, which I thought was pretty cute to see like him reunite with them as adults.
Well, interestingly enough, Jason Reitman, Ivan Reitman's son and a director in his own right, is the male half of the Making Out teens during the fire drill.
I didn't know that.
You know, I'm trying to think other little things about this movie.
Well, Elijah Wood auditioned for it, and
he says he gave the worst audition ever.
Yeah.
For this movie. Like I said, it's just such a winner, even though it's supposed to be a family film where we see a junkie overdose and see her on a mortician.
Yeah.
Like, I think they only did that to awaken the plot of this movie, because it's getting so soft and mushy again. It's like, hey, remember, he's supposed to be here for a reason, you know, other than to romance Penelope Ann Miller. But like I said, it's just one of those movies. Yeah, it's cheesy, but you don't really say anything bad about it. You know, it's like, it's charming in its own way.
Also, speaking of casting on this film, so this also changed the life direction of a certain actress that didn't get cast in this film. And I'm talking about Nicole Kidman. She had a choice between Kindergarten Cop and Days of Thunder. And she ended up doing Days of Thunder, married Tom Cruise. The rest was history. But if she had done this movie, she probably wouldn't have gotten into all that drama. But we don't know if she would have had the same career.
Well, I mean, no offense, I probably would want this more on my resume than Days of Thunder. But, you know, again, that's neither here nor there, because it's all dependent on what you want to believe.
And supposedly this movie wasn't even intended for Arnold in the beginning. They were looking at Bill Murray, Patrick Swayze, and Danny DeVito, of all people.
This just feels like when they were looking for that cameo in Zombieland. Like, who can we get? Bill Murray, Patrick Swayze? Oh, yeah, you know, or maybe Danny DeVito. And I'd be like, if you cast Danny DeVito, is it because he's roughly maybe the same size as the kids? Was that going to be the joke? You know, That seems more like a skit than a whole, 2-hour movie. Like, this is in poor taste. Now, I got a better idea. Cast Danny DeVito as the drug dealer.
Oh, God.
Now, that's a movie. And get the old lady from Throw Mama from the Train to play his mother, and you got a reunion. And
I bet if she was alive at that time, they would have cast her.
They could have. I mean, though this actress is a lot easier to understand when she speaks.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been typecasting with the Goonies, but so what? Same town and everything. It could be Moffatelli all over again, and we're universe building.
Exactly. I'm like, see, we're already starting early. I'd be like, hey, if I just wonder if they wouldn't have cast Richard Tyson, was Robert Davi next on the list?
That would have been fun.
I'd be like, I mean, obviously, like you said, I feel like Richard Tyson, who is a good actor, was also cast because of his size, going next to Arnold.
Yeah, 3 o'clock high. I mean, look how intimidating he was in there. Of course, he would be a good challenge for Arnold in that type of movie.
Unless, you go with my wild choice of Vernon Wells, playing that.
Again, though?
I'd be like, why not? Familiar Hey, this plot is familiar. Why not have familiar villains? And then we can cast an Australian woman as his mother. Make this international. Now I'm thinking like a studio head. Like, say we can open this in Australia big. Hey, we cast that newcomer Nicole Kidman. Yo, Australia's gonna love this movie. This shit sells itself. Like the drugs this guy imports.
I'm a cop, you idiot.
Because he is obviously not a street dealer. And if he had an Australian accent, we'd know that. Because why is he in America? Because he's importing the drugs.
But they work that in. Weirdly enough, they work in the fact that Arnold's character was German and he's got the son that he doesn't talk to because he has a problem with the wife. The wife moved away. So at least that got explained. Like, why is this California cop German?
Yet we never show it.
Why does he carry a ferret with him?
Because he needed that line early in the film where he says, "Oh, ferrets don't bite," and then, of course, at the end,
the
ferret bites, and that's what saves, the day. Yay, unnamed ferret. And plus, I think Arnold owned one at one point in real life, and so he's like, "I bought it."
So I wouldn't put it past me.
Well, he also doesn't he have one of those mini horses?
Yeah.
So my thing is, basically, I feel like how people accuse Beyonce of like just writing one line in a song and wanting co-writing credit. I feel like Arnold was like, put the ferret in there. They're funny. I have one. We can use it. But he gets no billing over me. I make fun of Arnold, but I love him. He is an American action and surprisingly comedic kind of icon.
I mean, yeah, he screwed up on a couple of things. Maybe his governorship wasn't the greatest, but the man, you cannot deny his star power and his ability to overcome adversity.
And I agree, and I feel like if somebody else starred in this might have still been a good comedy, but would it have been as memorable and as big?
Definitely not.
No offense, I like Stallone. I could not see him in this role. And
then he did Stop at My Mom Will Shoot as a result of this, and look how that shit turned out.
And Bruce Willis could not have done this because then all the kids would hate him now. So, and he would not show up for the reunion. In fact, did Bruce Willis ever work with, other than the kid, did Bruce Willis ever really work with children in a major? Mercury Rising. Was that Miko Hughes in that too?
I saw that in the theater.
Oh my God! And
he said he got along with him well. He got along with him and Alec Baldwin.
Well, I mean, I could see more Alec Baldwin than Bruce Willis. I just feel sorry for the director on that film. Like, oh Lord, Alec Baldwin and Bruce Willis.
Well, Bruce he did as a favor to the director, but he didn't care for the movie. Of course, he did it for the paycheck.
No, come on. It's Alec Baldwin.
I have inside information about that.
Oh, excuse me. You got inside information. Then you need to tell me how Danny DeVito did not end up as the villain in this movie.
What was he doing at that time? He just did War of the Roses. I don't know what he was working on back then.
I'm like, hey, man, I don't know who. Like I said, it would have been like, I don't know, Ruthless People too. Or maybe he didn't want to be typecast. He's like, why do you guys keep making me such an angry villain?
Probably.
Well, hey, he could have been Pamela Reed's lover for a cameo.
I could have actually seen him do that. That would have tore the house down.
Exactly. See, woulda, shoulda, coulda. But obviously, we both love this movie. And it has stood the test of time. Would you put it in your Arnold Schwarzenegger top 10 though?
In my top, if I did, it would be in the lower part. It would probably be like 9 or 10. I wouldn't put it that high.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, fortunately, Arnold Schwarzenegger keeps making movies. So he already has such a good thing. I'm with you. It would have to be in my lower half in the top 10. But I think it's one of his intentionally funniest movies.
Yeah, and it was at a time where he could pick out the best talent to work with behind the scenes, and they can push him to being better than he probably thought he could be. So, like, of course, with the action movies, he had Cameron, he had John McTiernan, but on the comedy side, going with Ivan Reitman, it was a combination that surprisingly worked. It started with Twins, carried over into Kindergarten Cop. Didn't work out so well for Junior, but that's another story for another day.
And hopefully this triplets, no.
Yeah, don't do it.
No, please, no.
Maybe another Conan, but not another. I don't know who wants this movie. Who is putting up the money and thinking there's still money in this shit?
I have no idea. I don't even know who's like begging for this movie to be made.
Did they not see what happened to the Matrix? Like, not everything needs to be touched.
Especially not Twins. Maybe this would have worked, like if you guys want to do this as triplets, like, maybe a few years after Twins had passed, but
like
now
1992, maybe like after Terminator 2, you could have done it then.
Yeah, but now too much time has passed. You're not getting the star that it was intended for.
Yeah, and Arnold's not in the same shape he used to be in. He's still in good shape, but he's not Conan.
No. And so I'm just like, I just be like, stick to this. I mean, I don't think they would even think of making a Kindergarten Cop sequel with Arnold, because then why is he back in kindergarten?
I heard a rumor, and I don't know if this is true, that Cop and a Half was intended to be a sequel to Kindergarten Cop, and it got reworked for Burt Reynolds. It's the same. It's still Brian Grazer producing both.
I know, but I'm just like,
I don't know how that would connect. That's the thing.
He still hates kids in a sequel. After all that we just saw go down.
Yeah.
And not to mention, if it was the joke of him not wanting to run, him running down a suspect instead of running out of his car when we have Arnold Schwarzenegger of all people playing the role, would that have been more of an in-joke? Yeah,
I don't know.
Not to mention, that was probably the last of the good. I'm not even going to go there about Burt Reynolds movies. So I respect those who have passed before us. So, but yeah, definitely I would say anybody who's watching this who hasn't seen Kindergarten Cop, go see it. It's worth it. It's worth your time. Trust me, we talk about a lot of other movies that are not worth your time. This is definitely worth it. Especially if you want to see Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime, especially comedy, because there ain't too many where he's like gifted naturally.
Yeah, not these days.
Yeah, the less of Junior, the better. So that ends this business for this week. But as you know, we always have unfinished business to tackle. So thank you for coming or watching this unfinished business deep dive on Kindergarten Cop. Until next time.